and let's complete our class. Okay. Okay, so where did we stop in the last class? I think we had stopped kat slide ni, betul ke? Okay, so I suppose everyone who have attended the class, okay, so you would have gone through from the beginning. Okay, so basically we did talk about what is work and so on. So very general, very easy and simple basically. And we reach this slide where it talks about managers. Okay, so what do managers require to do? So one is they are accountable to the project. Okay, so to make sure that the project is completed effectively and efficiently. Another one is accountable to the satisfaction of the people. Okay, so this mentioning that if you are involved with the project, the satisfaction of the people doing the work. But actually, beyond that, besides your team members, you should also aim to satisfy the society, okay, the community surrounding those area tu. So your stakeholder. So besides this lah. So in general, basically trying to satisfy as much as you can. Or sometimes I mean it's difficult for us to satisfy everybody. Okay, so yelah, everyone would have their own thoughts, would have their own perception, but obviously when we're talking about satisfy majority, okay, so not easy to satisfy everyone because everyone have their own mindset and so on. But at least if we are talking about for example a traffic diversion, okay, or any traffic control, if majority yang complain, then something is not right with how we actually navigate or divert the traffic of a certain area project too, and we have a traffic diversion. But if you receive complaints from majority, from tons of people, then something is not right lah. But if it's just one or two that actually file a complaint, and the complaint is probably to a point negligible, then it's fine. Okay, so obviously we need to take into account feedback daripada orang, but we give and take, wait and see whether certain procedures, protocols have been in place, and it has been done, and we have kept the pollution, or we have kept the jam to a lowest minimal level, then okay lah tu. Okay, so I think we have talked about effective efficiency, right? So the difference is whereby when we're talking about a strategy being effective, which means it is addressing the goal. Okay, but jalan yang kita ambil, the method, the way we actually conduct to reach our goal tu, is it efficient enough? Obviously, the best is where we want something like um this lah. Okay, so if we go into this, effective is how well we have achieved the goal. Okay, so for example, simple analogy ialah your study. Okay, so your daily strategies, your effort, your initiative to increase your CGPA. So at the end of the day, we could measure it with the result. Okay, so with the examination, that is clear measurement lah. So not taking into account your life experience ke apa, just purely based on your exam results. Okay, so you can see whether at the end of the semester, have you achieved the goal that you have targeted for. Okay, so obviously goal setiap orang berbeza. Some are having A, for example, some aim okay cukup-cukup lepas pun boleh. So obviously everyone's goal is different, so every project goal berbeza. So obviously depending on the goal that we have set. Okay, so how far or how much have we achieved the goal? And effective is making the right decision, successfully implementing them, and doing the right thing, right way at the right time. Okay, so that is being effective. Efficient, basically, it relates a lot with the resources. Okay, so using minimal resources, produce the desired volume of output. So in subject matter or in your academic, basically, are we able to get an A for a subject, but with, efficient use of energy, efficient use of time, for example. Okay, so because sometimes we assume, okay, we put much time on that, then it should produce a good result. Tapi sometimes the quality of the time that we have actually allocated, sometimes maybe the time that we have allocated is where we could be out of focus. Okay, so maybe one student is having 1 hour of studying, tapi dia focus. Okay, so 1 hour of focus can bring you a lot. But on the other hand, another student is spending 3 hours, tapi the mind is everywhere. Okay, so kejap-kejap you buka WhatsApp, you buka email, news, a little bit of discussion chat with your friends. So fokus ni dengan fokus ni, it is different. So obviously, the time that you have spent, whether it is efficient atau tidak. Okay, using resources wisely in a cost-effective way and operating in such a way that your resources are not wasted. Okay, so that's efficiency. So if we put it in the context of a quadrant, okay, so this will be what we call quadrant. Okay, so a 25, 25, 25, 25 quadrant. Okay, so if let's say at the y-axis, we talk about goal, and x-axis, we talk about resource. Okay, so obviously the best is where we can have good utilization of resource, and at the same time we can achieve the goal. Okay, so the quadrant yang on top ni, so effective and efficient. Okay, any question? Okay, so effective and efficient. So whereby goals are achieved and resources well utilized. So area of high performance. So this is where basically you are on top lah. Okay, so you could actually deliver at the same time with optimum use of resource. I mean, sometimes poor use of resource pun not really that good. Optimize lah, optimize. Okay, so resource utilization good, goal attainment poor, not very good. Okay, so you can be very efficient, tapi maybe you jimat. Okay, so basically you are very thrifty. You spend very wisely, tapi the effect is on the goal. Okay, so not being effective. So basically you did not waste your resources, but still your goal is not achieved, pun tak bagus lah. Okay, so obviously we want something that you could spend well, but at the same time your goal is achieved. Okay, so poor resource utilization, goal attainment is high. So for example, this one, okay, so you achieve the goal, but the resource utilization is not good. So meaning to say that you achieve the target, completing the project within the quality time and what do you call, potential cost required, tapi there are quite a lot of resources that you have wasted along the way. Okay, so this is the worst quadrant. Okay, so it's neither effective nor efficient. You did not actually optimize the resources, and at the same time you did not also achieve the goal. So this is the worst case that you can be in lah for a certain project. Okay, so moving to the next, this is about the high quality. So as a project manager, so I mentioned that just now, we talk about performance of the project in a project. Secondly, we talk about as a project manager, you need to motivate your workers as well. So you need to provide them a conducive work environment, so that at the end of the project pun, they are still willing to work for you and they are still willing to be in a project. Okay, so a high quality of work life offers such things. All right, so first, adequate and fair pay for a job well done. Second, safe and healthy working condition. Okay, so third, opportunity to learn, use new skills. Fourth, room to grow and progress in a career. Fifth, protection of individual rights. And sixth, pride in the work itself and the organization. So in general, practically we start with a pay. Normally, as a fresh graduate, okay, so as a graduate engineer, obviously the first thing you will look at will be in terms of salary. So if you have to work 7 days a week and your salary is super low that you could only afford to pay for food and rental and that's it, so probably it's pretty low lah. Okay, but well, sometimes they did highlight that as a fresh graduate, disregard the pay sikit, okay, get the experience, and while you're moving along the line of your job, you can apply to another job and so on. True in a construction, okay, or in civil engineering, experience is pretty expensive. Okay, so if let's say you started out with a low pay, but don't think that it will last forever. So at the same time, empower yourself with the experience that you would actually gain. So that's very important. I think kat mana-mana pun lah. So once we graduate, okay, so we have the technical skill, at least for a design, but we do not have the experience needed. So that is where we actually get the experience and then find for another job with a better pay and so on. Okay, but and then next thing, okay, so obviously is safety and healthy working condition. In construction per se, I think I mentioned in the class as well. So there are construction sites who emphasize a lot on safety and health. Okay, so they provide a very good, impeccable safety and health environment um, for the pengurusan or for the managerial position as well as for the workers. Okay, especially when we are talking about not only physical attributes of the worker, but also mental. Okay, so that is where actually you can see an organization is going beyond um, nak cakap beyond pun, well, mental and physical is part and parcel of a human. I would say maybe when an organization thinks about mental well-being, psychology of the workers, they are doing more than the others are doing lah, basically. Okay, so because when we're talking about safety, it is safety. Okay, so normally you would be given the PPE, proper scaffolding being used. There are safety nets if it's a high rise. So at least those things are in proper. Safety boot, helmet to normal lah. Okay. If you're going for high rise, maybe the harness. Okay, so you're given harness rather than panjat je without any harness kan. Okay, so that's in terms of safety. Health pula is about the health. Are you healthy? Okay, so sihat ke tak, for example. So healthy also includes basically your well-being. Okay, so mental well-being, for example. So safety and health. So it goes hand in hand, tapi it's two different things. Okay, so practically your working condition should give you that lah. So normally we'll go for that. So usually if the environment is okay and the job is secured, then usually we'll go for opportunity to learn. If you get into a job and you feel that you don't want to learn anymore, I think the job is killing you. Okay, so I think it is not a good environment for you to grow because you are having a degree. Okay, so and you are learned with a degree, supposedly you should have possessed this lifelong learning. Okay, so you should have gauged that skill or basically the attitude for lifelong learning. you learn every day. Okay, so some other when you get married, what you need to do, you have children. So skill and your role would change, but you need to adapt and you need to learn how to actually give your best when you're in a certain role. Okay, so an organization that does not provide you opportunity to learn, then dia akan jadi how dia akan jadi you will be what do we say you'll be dormant. Okay, and then the job will get boring because you are doing the same thing again and again and again without having the opportunity to learn something else or to expand your mind. So dia akan jadi boring, and to one point you will get tired, exhausted, because you're doing the same thing. If you're doing the same routine without any way for you to actually grow, it's pretty boring. Okay, so that is important. Okay, so besides that, if an organization does not provide you room to grow, for example, you have been absorbed as a junior engineer, and for 5 years pun you masih kat position yang sama, and for 10 years you masih kat position yang sama, it is not allowing you to grow. Okay, and there is no progress in a career. Once you start a job, you should understand how you can expand in that career. Okay, so if you have started as a graduate engineer or junior engineer for a certain organization, seek for information how actually you can get to be a senior engineer, how actually you can get to be a project manager, for example. So you need to know that so that you are doing the right steps. Okay, so that protection of individual rights is where you are being how to say, you are being protected if there are any unrightful actions taken by the uh, employer. For example, during COVID time, there are a lot of retrenchment. There are a lot of short notice unemployment lah, retrenchment lah, basically. So can they do that? Can the employer do that? And is there any association or body that you can file a complaint? So, for example, for UiTM, for example, we are not under QPEX, we are under is something called MITASA. Okay, so whereby if there are any issues, let's say if there are unhappy about the pay which has not been revised for many years, decades, so maybe you can highlight it through the association. Okay, but for government servant in general, if I'm not mistaken, is QPEX. And for private pun, they have their own workers union. So kita panggil dia workers union lah, basically. Okay, and that's especially important if we are talking about workers, for example. Okay, so workers union. And next ialah pride in the work itself and the organization. Okay, so a certain job and a certain organization should um should provide that thought to the workers, whereby you're having pride. Okay, so berbangga lah, basically you are proud to be serving this organization, for example. If there is an organization that you're not proud to serve, you malu whenever someone asks you where are you working and you're shy to say that, then something is not right. Okay, so an organization should strive to better themselves, so that it could be a sense of pride to the workers lah, lebih kurang. Okay, so these are some of the work-life quality that could be offered by an organization, as well as project manager who is working for the organization. Okay, so this is a key concept of management. So this is the one that I've mentioned. You need to know, very, very, very important. Okay, so the 4 functions of management consist of planning, organizing, leading, controlling, and staffing. Okay, so basically it's planning, organizing, staffing, leading, controlling. Okay, so So the descriptions of the four functions. Basically, when we are talking about planning, this is where we set the goal. Okay, so we set the goal and we identify what are the activities or what are the actions that we need to do for us to actually address the goal. Okay, from a set of alternative. So you can imagine when we are trying to plan a construction, okay, as simple as let's say we are planning how we are actually trying transporting concrete into a site. Okay, there are various ways we can go about it. Okay, so you can actually have the alternative of using this concrete truck daripada luar. Okay, so you would have concrete truck in and out of site, or you might have another alternative whereby you have a batching plant itself on the site. Okay, so there's another alternative. So there could be several alternatives when you are trying to plan for something. Okay, so in construction lagi banyak. So obviously when we are trying to look into an option, we will look into the economic aspect, we'll look into whether the feasibility of it. Okay, so sekejap Alright, so basically we need to select the course of action. Okay, so obviously the course of action will be based on several alternatives, right? So for example, if we are concerned about air pollution, so if we actually hire concrete truck in and out of the site often, and we require concrete yang banyak on the site, and if the organization is concerned about green and so on, then maybe that is not the option. Okay, so maybe the better option to reduce the air pollution and with the high usage of concrete would be using a batching plant. So then you might already select your course of action. Okay, for the job of concreting. So planning is so huge. Okay, so you start from a very huge goal. Okay, so what are the ultimate goal, and then you break it down into action, break it down into the alternative, and which would we select as the action. Okay, so goal tak banyak. So for example, for a construction project, your goal maybe is to complete let's say a single bungalow. Okay, so that is your goal. So obviously the goal and there are contractual requirements to that. Okay, so within the time, cost, quality required, and so on. Okay, and when we talk about plan, we decide what to do in advance. Okay, so what to do, how to do it, when to do it, to do it. Okay, so when we are planning, we need to know what to do. Basically, would answer what are the activities involved. Okay, how to do it, we will determine, or we will establish the method that we are going to do it. Okay, so simple example as the concreting just now. Okay, so several ways of doing it. And on before concreting, if you're talking about even designing, so the selection of structure. Okay, are we talking about concreting in situ? Okay, so we concrete on the site itself. Or alternatively, we think that, okay, we don't want to concrete in situ. We want it to be based on off-site manufacturing. So meaning to say that you want it to base on IBS system, industrialized building system. Everyone knows what is IBS? Pernah dengar IBS?
Pernah.
Okay, so good. So at least you have heard of it. Okay, IBS is the term is basically industrialized building system. Okay, so what does IBS means? More or less. IBS tu apa? More or less. Any idea what is IBS in simple terms that you can explain ke, cakap ke?
IBS tu macam yang dah sedia buat.
Betul? Okay, so IBS industrialized building system is where the building system is being manufactured off-site. Okay, other words for IBS, we can find sometimes they use off-site manufacturing. Okay, so um, basically it is not on the site, or precast. Okay, so precast elements. So those are being done not on the construction site. So I think IBS has been introduced in the industry almost 20, 30 years juga. Okay, so almost 30 years. So actually the idea is good. Okay, so because meaning to say that all the risk, safety and health risk could be reduced. So when you are using IBS, so the elements are being manufactured at the factory. So you will not have the issue of coming up with a reinforcement bar, concreting on the side, installing reinforcement bar, and so on, scaffolding. So you can reduce the risk of safety and health because you only need to install like a Lego on the side. So the elements have been constructed or has been produced at the factory. You just need to mobilize it to the site, and you need skilled workers to install the elements together. So in comparison to the common traditional way, whereby we build benda tu on the site. So to build, for example, a precast wall, okay, so you need to install the BRC, you need to install the reinforcement bar, you need to place the formwork, you need to pour in the concrete. So it's in comparison, you have at the factory, dia layout macam tu and they can cast easily. So it will reduce quite a lot in terms of safety and health, in terms of the reliance of foreign workers, in terms of the effect, influence of weather. Okay, so those are the things that you can actually, if it's pouring, rain, so you can do it. So you can reduce quite a lot of risk on that. So and that could be transferred to the factory. So you'll be much safer and so on. And at the same time, because when we're talking about foreign workers, the influx of what do you call, our currency outside. Okay, so because at least when we're talking about IBS, we can hire in local workers, okay, skilled workers. So because when we're talking about in situ, concreting and so on, the job is tough and the pay is not that high. But if we are talking about skilled workers, because those are basically more or less concreting unskilled. So skilled workers are not that many. So hence the salary could be higher, right? So, and you only need a few to install IBS system. So that is basically on IBS lah. Okay, so hence, all right, so coming back here, okay, so just a slight description of IBS while I actually mentioned that. Okay, so method in doing that. So how to do it. So if you are using IBS and so on, then it's much easier. Okay, cuma why the demand is not there for IBS? It has been introduced for 30 years, and that is the way to go for the industry to actually prosper, productivity higher. A lot of the comments by the industry is, one, because it's still relatively expensive, and also the supply might not be that much because of the lack of supplier factories, and also transportation might be quite difficult, especially if you are talking about the element to be besar, huge. So in terms of transportation might be an issue as well. But cuma sometimes if the project is a huge project, normally like companies like Gamuda, for example, they might do precast tapi on the site. So they might have like a mini factory to do precast, but on the site itself. So for big companies, they might be able to do that. Okay. Another thing is basically in terms of flexibility, okay, of the design itself. Okay, so something like that. Okay, so how to do it would result in the methods. When to do it, basically in terms of the time. Okay, so obviously when we plan, we need to have a schedule or timeline to it. Kalau tak, you will take forever lah. Okay, and who to do it? Basically, we could decide on do we require subcontractor? Who are the subcontractors required, suppliers, and so on. Okay, so that's basically on the planning, but we will go in detail on planning in the chapter project planning. Okay, so the next one is basically on organizing. Okay, so organizing is where how you organize the activities and resources together. So usually through a work breakdown structure. Okay, so you can organize certain activities to be under structural, certain activities to be under mechanical, certain activities to be under structural, mechanical, architecture. Okay, so basically this is where you actually allocate your resources. Under structural, you might require subcons of reinforcement and so on. Okay, so you determine the composition of work groups and the way in which works and activities are coordinated. So leading is where you need to have a person accountable. Okay, so that person will be providing instruction, and also that person will be getting the input from the lower level. Okay, so the set of processes used to get organization members to work together for the interest of the organization. Okay, so this is where you should have an leader who motivates, communicates with the organization human resource to ensure goals are attained. Okay, so leading through people. So next, while you are leading, giving instruction, your work is ongoing, you need to monitor and control. Okay, so while your work is progressing, there should be monitoring and controlling. So controlling is where monitoring and controlling, it comes hand in hand. You can't control without monitoring. Okay, so but in the functions of project management, kita panggil controlling lah. But per se, you need to have monitoring. Okay, so monitor the progress towards the goal and the process of comparing results and expectation. So basically, when you are monitoring, you want to identify the gap. So comparing the result or what is currently happening on the site and what you have planned earlier. So if you do not monitor, you can just go on and on and on, tapi where to stop? Okay, so it is an important process whereby you monitor the result and expectation, and if there are any deviations, then you take the appropriate action. Okay, by controlling the situation. So control is mostly when we need to take certain action. So for example, delays. Okay, so normally either they will extend the working hours, worse they would create this shift. Okay, they will work extend to midnight work shift and so on. Okay, so if you want to control the damage. Okay, the last one, okay, they call it pesky because sometimes people see this as ialah staffing, you need to get people to work on it. But actually staffing plays a huge role sebenarnya. Okay, because you get the wrong person to work on that, then wrong lah, susah lah jadinya. So your work will not be progressing well and so on. Okay, so the recruitment, the selection, the assignment, training, development, evaluation, compensation is important. Okay, so how you recruit, who you are recruiting, how you select your engineers, how you assign them, the training that is being required is important, especially when in current situations, we are using quite a lot of technologies. Okay, so BIM, for example. So you need to send your personnel for training. So kalau tak, who is going to make sure that the BIM model is correct and it is being monitored well? Okay, so staffing. Okay, so those are the 5 important functions that you need to know. So far, any question? Okay, I assume tak ada tu, tak ada soalan lah ya. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Okay, so next one is basically management levels. So there are several levels that we usually associate ourselves with in terms of management. Okay, so the top managers are basically the CEO of an organization. It depends on the company. So if there is this a huge company, perlulah ada CEO. Tapi if it's just a small organization, small contracting company, maybe it is not called CEO, maybe it's just called owner, for example. Okay, so or maybe it's called owner ataupun the director of a company macam tu lah. Okay, so might not use the word or the term CEO. But let's say we are talking about organization of a certain established organization. So you might have CEO, you might have vice president, you might have group head. Okay, so that could be that. And then they might be supported by middle managers. Okay, so can be general manager, can be an administrator. Okay, so in terms of that managerial position. And then you might have first line managers. Okay, so which are segregated based on functions. Okay, so you might have accounting manager or head of accounting or head of HR or head of production and so on. And you might have non-managerial employees. Okay, but for the construction per se, general layout of a construction, usually it will be headed by project manager. But sometimes if the construction is larger than that, might be a director. Okay, so but if no, a normal project would have a project manager on the side, and then it will be assisted by maybe senior engineer, and then you have engineer, or you will have junior engineer, and then below that you will have supervisor and so on. Supervisor, more or less supervisor, and then it will be the workers. Okay. All right, so these are some of the definition for management level. Okay, so first line managers basically directly responsible for day-to-day operation. Okay, supervise and coordinate the activities of operating employees. So this one in a construction site sometimes could be the direct supervisor, or can be an engineer who provides the direction. So it depends. So it could be an engineer providing the instruction to the supervisor, supervisor providing it to the workers, or if not, the supervisor would actually go through the drawing and providing the response to the workers. Okay, middle manager basically in the middle level. Okay, so responsible for sections or departments, supervise or coordinate the activities of first line. So middle manager here in a construction site could be a senior engineer. Okay, so they actually supervise, coordinate this person. So in simple terms, I would say in a construction, probably first line manager would be the supervisor. Middle manager would be the engineer. Manager per se would be the project manager. Okay, so top or senior managers form a team, manage the organization's goal, and also responsible to the entire enterprise. So if you look into the descriptions here, it actually represents more of a day-to-day operation management. Okay, so for university, we would use something like this. But for the construction, it is slightly different. Okay, so you might not have what you call organizational goal, but in what you call, it would be a project goal per se. Okay, so cuma the terms here lah, enterprise, organization goal. So because it is management at the operational basis. Okay, for a project might not be this term. So you might be looking at project goal, responsible for project, and so on. Okay. Okay, the next part of our lecture or our point is basically on the skill. Okay, so in terms of skill, there are several skills that is being required at different levels of management. Okay, so you would have top managers here and non-managerial position here. But the three skills that are being required by all, Takesa, you are at which level? You must have conceptual skill, you must have people skill, must have technical skill. The only difference is where the weight of the skill is. Okay, so if you look into this, your top managerial, if you're in a top managerial position, your conceptual skill might be high. You are required to have this high level of conceptual skill, people skill as well, but your technical skill might be less. Okay, but at the opposite end of the chart, okay, so for non-managers or basically people is doing the day-to-day job too, okay, so your technical skill of installing certain item, okay, might be high. So for example, in terms of installing IBS, the top managers might not know how do they install element to element, point to point. So dia tak tahu. So because that is being installed on the site by the skilled workers, for example. Okay, so the technical skill of them would be higher compared to top managers. Okay, and they would need to have conceptual skill, how to install those items, and also people skill. So meaning to say that the higher you go, you might not need to know the nitty-gritty things of the technical. So, but as a postgraduate or as a graduate, fresh graduate student, you need to have this first. Okay, so I believe if you're a fresh graduate, you should have possessed this the most technical skill. But at the same time, you cannot neglect the people skill and also conceptual skill. Okay, so what is a conceptual skill? So conceptual skill is a skill for you to have this foresight. Okay, so for you to foresee what could be the potential resultant of a certain action. Okay, so it is the ability to think, to integrate, to give direction so that the objectives are achieved. So, meaning to say that if you are in a managerial position, you would see how to grow an organization. You would see how to expand from the current project. You need to get another 2, 3, 4 projects. Okay, so that is your job at the top managerial position. So you will need to have the conceptual skill. A little bit lower, let's say we are talking about project manager. A conceptual skill is where how a project manager could solve issues by judging or by looking at several alternatives. So you can't be straightforward in addressing issues because you can have several actions. Action A, action B, action C, action C, a D to actually address certain problem. But which would you select? So you would have the ability to think the consequences. What will be the consequences? So conceptual skill would require high level of critical thinking. Okay, so you would have a lot of it's like visualizing what would be consequences of a certain action and how would people respond to that. Okay, so if you are trying to actually expand your project, okay, if you're trying to expand, get more project for the company, you need to know how the economy is working. You need to know whether is this the best time for us to invest in a certain portfolio. So those comes with conceptual. Okay, technical, I think you as a graduate engineer, okay, so when you're graduating, simply you can actually design a building. Okay, so you can design, given a task, you can design a simple building. So that is technical skill, right? People skill is about getting people to work, communication, providing information, getting information, people. Okay, so you need to be able to communicate, understand, motivate people. So without all these three, if you only possess or if you are very good at certain skill but weak on the other skill, dia jadi tak balance lah. Okay, so it is best that you can strive to balance, but obviously as you climb the ladder higher, you might not need to know every single point of how it is being installed. Just enough sufficient for you to get the gist of it. Okay, so important skills that is being required: conceptual, people, technical. Okay. All right, so these are just managers by area. Okay, so you might have in a company, okay, so in an organization, you might have several managers by area. Okay, so you might have a marketing manager. For a normal company, for a normal manufacturing, yes, you need to market your product. For construction, who would do the marketing? For the construction, who would do the marketing? Engineer ke? Okay.
Kan?
Siapa yang buat marketing ni? Okay, in a construction, okay, marketing can mean so many things. Okay, the word marketing tu pun dah quite huge lah in construction. First, are we looking at marketing our product? Okay, so if for construction, our deliverables or our output is the facility, the building. Okay, so if you are constructing a residential, that residential will be your product. You need to sell it. Okay, so marketing will be done by the developer's office lah. Okay, so that is one way of looking at marketing from the context of construction. So the deliverables will be marketed by the developer's office. Okay, so that's why you can see what do we call it? Showrooms. Okay, so showroom is being done by the developer, and you would have a salesperson kat sana trying to sell you the house. Okay. Another context of marketing in construction could be marketing your expertise, a consultant office, or whether you are a contractor. Obviously, tak ada project, tak ada anything, you can't even run. And so once you have a project in hand, you can't just wait until the project complete. Boleh. So you would have simultaneous project running. You need to market your expertise through that. That one is marketing from another context. In construction, marketing selain daripada tu will be like the job of a sales engineer. You might market certain elements of for in a project. For example, you can be a sales engineer for a certain IBS system. Maybe you are a sales engineer for what do we call it? Truss system. Okay, so light steel truss system maybe. So more or less when we talk about marketing in the context of construction, I could recall three basically. So one is from we are trying to here Dr. Hafiz. Oh, okay, okay. Thank you. Oh, okay, okay. Thank you. So when we are talking about marketing, so it involves more or less three of that lah. Okay, so from the outcome, okay, so from the output and we are trying to sell off our deliverables, from the context of we are selling our expertise, and from the context as we are selling the product of a construction ataupun element for a construction. Steel light steel truss system ke, if you are selling anything lah, basically certain bricks ke, green bricks and so on. Okay, so sales engineer per se. Okay, but obviously in marketing or in IT, they are selling their product lah, obviously. Okay, and services, if we are talking about finance, banking, tourism, so those might be marketing their services. Okay, so financial manager basically would deal with organizations' finance. Operations manager would deal with managing system. Most of it is related to IT lah. Okay. Okay, other than that, what do we have? Managers by area, administrative, okay, and there are many others if the portfolio in an organization is big. Tapi very importantly, any organization, doesn't matter the organization is small or big, you must have the HR dulu. If you don't have the HR, practically who's gonna make sure that the monthly salary is being disseminated well? Who is going to do the hiring process? So it doesn't matter any organization, very important, you must have the HR department. Okay, so HR is where the planning is being done, recruitment, okay, so selection, training, salary, compensation, semua tu lah, and also appraisal system, kenaikan pangkat, so is the HR. So without the HR, it is pretty dysfunctional of an organization. Who's going to manage that? Someone needs to manage the human resource. Okay, and administrative managers, okay, and also other managers. So if you look into large organization, banyak, so many kind of managers according to portfolio. So in construction, if we are talking about latest advancement, nowadays we have BIM managers. Okay, if you are using BIM for a project, you might have BIM manager, sustainability manager. So those are the new things, and potentially there is a portfolio created for that. Okay, may include IT. Okay, I mentioned for construction, it could include BIM. Okay, building information modeling. Okay, so these are just some of the characteristics of management. Okay, so it could be various varieties. For construction, it could be fragmented, but in a normal managerial position, it's also fragmented. You can see that we have various layers. So sometimes there is a drawback. I mean, it is good because it is structured, different layers, different positioning, but sometimes it could create more bureaucracy. Okay, so for approval, you might require several layers of approval. Okay, so that could be one lah. So brevity, okay, complexity, large volume of work to be completed quickly. Okay, so these are just simple example je lah the responsibility of a manager. Okay, so fundamental management skills. So similar to the one that we have discussed just now, technical skill, interpersonal skill, okay, or people skill. So it involves communication, okay, so understanding and motivation. So very important when we're talking about people skill ni, communication. So language. So the one of the constraint also in construction, if we are relying a lot on foreign workers, ialah communication, language. Can they understand what we are trying to deliver? So would that be a communication breakdown? So that's why I often, or basically I think in every class I would highlight. So prepare yourself also, not only communicating with the workers, you also need to communicate well with the society, with the management, with your boss. So in the industry, it is a lot, unless it is a government project. But if we are talking about normal project, private project, and so on, English is the language used. Okay, so make sure, try your level best while you are studying, polish up on the English. Okay, so the more language you learn, the more language that you could you are able to speak, the better. Okay, so communication. And to enhance your speaking, or basically to enhance the language, it is only through practice. Okay, so basically for language, I would say practice makes perfect. Okay, so if you can write well, sometimes you can see people who can write very well, tapi susah nak bercakap because it is not being practiced. Okay, so language is about practicing. Okay, so no point that you write, tapi benda tu it is not being verbally communicated, susah. Okay, so it will require practice. Okay, so conceptual is where ability to think in abstract, to see the organization as a complete unit, integrate, give direction to its diverse activities. So that's why when you are having this conceptual mind is where you can see it as a whole. It's like macam you can see all the issues at the top, from the top. So rather than sometimes we see a problem as itu je, that is the problem, that is the solution. Because being too narrow-minded. Conceptual is the opposite of being narrow-minded. So if we are narrow-minded, sometimes we do not accept opinions. We do not accept suggestion from people. So it's not really that good. Okay, so being narrow-minded. So it does not provide you the opportunity to think, expand the mind. Okay, so conceptual will be someone who actually has the mindset of dia boleh tengok from the top. Okay, so how to actually grow the organization as that. So conceptual. Okay, so other than that, other skills that we are talking about, okay, so diagnostic, okay, so ability to visualize appropriate response to a certain problem, communication, okay, and also decision making. So I think decision making is important as well because you have problems coming in. Tapi which is the best solution? So obviously, while you are making, we are trying to make decision, we need to weigh what are the pro and cons of the different alternative and how would that impact orang yang menerima. Okay, so decision making. So, and I think these skills not only benefit the while you are working, but it benefits you as a human. Bila kita buat decision tu, so we need to have a decision which is informed. Sometimes decision yang follow macam kita follow the heart. Okay, so but it is not well informed. You do not have complete set of evidence or complete set of information to support your decision making. Sometimes the decision can be wrong, and bila dah wrong to rectify is another story. Okay, so other than that, time management as well. So I think this is very important. That is why if you look into while you are studying, time is of essence. Okay, so that's why some lecturers are pretty rigid in terms of time. Submission of assignment, masuk kelas, kena tepat at the time and so on. Actually, it is to train you to be the being there lah, okay, in your work life. Okay, all right, so this is nothing. Okay, I dah remove. Yes. Oh, okay. Yes, I dah bagi. Right. Okay, so before we have a short apa tu short 5 to 10 minutes of break, let's jawab this one. Okay, so question number 1. For most organizations, top management consists of A, B, C, or D. Okay, so the first one, For most organizations, top management consists of A ke, B or C or D?
B.
B. Okay, so if you look into the previous notes, you would see that for most. So that's why when I explain this one, it depends on organization. So some organization might not have this, but for most established organization, they should have a CEO, president, vice president, and so on. Okay. All right. So for number 2, the management functions are A, B, C, or D.
A.
Okay. So this one you need to know. This is the fundamental. So the management functions consists of the planning, organizing, staffing, leading, and controlling. Okay, number 3. The categories of management roles are. I feel like I skipped this one. Yeah. Okay, this one. Okay, this one. Okay, so sure how it got skipped. 3 key roles of a project manager. Okay, beside the skill, but as a project manager, these are the 3 roles that needs to be played. One is as informer, okay, informational, and then interpersonal role. Okay, so another one is decisional role. So 3 main roles that needs to be played by the manager. Okay, so when we are talking about informational, so manager needs to monitor how the information is being disseminated. Okay, so monitor the input, output of the information. And when we are talking about construction per se, it's very important. Any misinformation would cause the workers or would cause a different instruction built wrongly, and it does not tally with the drawing. So very important to ensure that the information directive given to betul. Also, when we are talking about certain change in instruction, especially if there are any design changes or design ambiguity. Okay, so if there are certain queries on the design, a contractor needs to get back to the consultant, and a proper communication should be established there. So if let's say a contractor contacts the consultant, okay, there are certain reinforcement here, but drawing is not clear. And then you call the consultant cakap, okay, install T10, for example, T2020, and you just do it. Tapi tak ada anything in terms of written form. If anything happens to the project, so the fault might be on the contractor because the changes are being done without recording the changes too. So it's a very important. So that's why if nothing happens to the building, it's okay, tak apa. But if let's say there are structural damage to the building, certain area of the building collapse, then all the communication would be looked through, especially black and white. Kalau tak ada black and white, make the changes, but it was not recorded, it will be a huge trouble. Okay, so informational, monitor the input of information, disseminate correct information, and also as a spokesperson. Okay, positions the manager so as to facilitate sending, receiving of information. So interpersonal is where manager acts as the figure. Okay. Sometimes if you place a person in a leadership role, in a leader role, tapi dia tak ada that characteristic of a leader, it's quite difficult to command. Okay, so if a leader could not command the workers or could not command the team, then the project will be falling apart. Okay, so when we place a leader, it should come with a certain characteristic, certain competency, dia ada leadership character lah basically. Okay, so should be the leader, and also at the same time should be the have the license. Okay, involve the manager in relationship with other individuals both inside and outside, and decisioner. Okay, so entrepreneur, disturbance handler, resource allocator, and negotiator. Okay, so could make a proper decision with an informed information. So that with that, you should be able to answer the third question. Okay, so the categories of management roles are, so the role of a project manager or a manager will be interpersonal, decisional. Sorry, it would be which one interpersonal,
D.
informational, and decisional. Okay, so a manager needs to have this interpersonal role, informational role, decisional role. Okay, so number 4, the skills that all managers need are A, B, C, or D.
B.
Okay, B, So any manager, okay, would need to have a conceptual, technical, people skill. Okay, all right. So that's on the first chapter. So far, any question for this before we move on to the next one? So maybe we can have pukul berapa? 40. Maybe we can have a 5 minutes break. Okay, so just get yourself walking around. We'll meet in 5 minutes. So we'll start at 4, more or less 4:20, more or less. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, sorry class. Alamak, I got distracted. Okay, let's get back. Are you all here? Masih ada kat sini ke?
Ada
Yes.
masuk.
Okay, so kita continue a little bit on the second part second part sikit. Okay, so let's continue a little bit on the introduction to management part 2. Okay, so at the end of this, you should be able to describe the origin of management theory and the current management theory. Okay, so the origin of this management theory too, I think I have described slightly sikit in the last class. Can you recall actually the origin tu dari mana? I think I did discuss a little bit. So how actually the management theories came about? Since when? Ingat tak? So when did the management theory basically came about? Bila tu? Tak ingat ke? I think it was last...
Tak ingat, madam.
Tak ingat. Did I mention Industry 1.0? Ada tak? I mentioned Industrial Revolution 1.0.
Ada.
And then I did ask ni Industrial Revolution yang keberapa?
Keempat.
Kan? So adalah I did mention about that. Okay. So management theory started when the Industrial Revolution started. Okay, so which means it was Industrial Revolution 1.0, whereby people are moving from agricultural, feudal system to manufacturing, okay, to industrialized apa tu situation. So that started when people can move from place to place, right? So prior to that, they are very secluded. You are from this town. Basically, everything is within that town. So your buyer will be from the same town. You produce there, you buy there, you sell there. Your demand, your supply in that localized area. Tapi when they have recognized or when they have came out with locomotives, people can move from town to town, jauh. So you can move from distance to distance. So hence you can supply your barang tu to another town. So that is where when factories come in. So because the demand is there. Okay, so with that coming industrialized manufacturing makin besar from small town to bigger pool of demand, you would need to enlarge your project, you need to enlarge your business, factories coming in. So you can imagine situation waktu tu is chaotic. Okay, and people are from, imagine you are from small town and suddenly you jump into a city, you get a job in a city, padahal sebelum tu you are in a small town. So quite a lot to digest, so chaotic lah. And when we are moving like that, um you need something to manage. Okay, with that chaos, you need something to manage. So hence keluar all those theories. Okay, management theory. So this is where people try to discover how to manage people, how to manage production, how to manage administration, how do we actually manage the situation. Because too many things, you're not only managing output, and how do you manage output? Sometimes it might relate to the workers, sometimes it might relate to the way the method is being done. So this is where actually it started. Industrial Revolution gave way to management theories. So meaning to say that more or less dalam late 1880, early 1900, lebih kurang something like that lah. Okay, so it starts with classical theory. Okay, so classical theory, one of it will be scientific management by Frederick Winslow Taylor, and that is the theory's name, and followed by administrative management by Henry Fayol. Okay, so we'll go into one by one of the theories later. And then moving from classical theory, because classical theory is a lot to do with improving the productivity of the floor. Okay, basically giving workers proper instruction to do their job. Okay, and administrative theory or management is about managing the organization. Okay, how should organization manage themselves? Centralized ke, decentralized ke, penalizing system ke? So administrative. Okay, administrate. And then soon, while they are moving through that kind of like a reasoning for management, and then we came about human relation. So human relation theory is about theory that looks into people pula. Because prior to that, we do not really look into how people behave, how people are motivated to work, because the concern is management, how it is being done. So not much looking into the people aspect. Tapi moving forward, they realize that people is an essence. Okay, so slowly they see how actually people behave, how to motivate people at work. Do they need a good social environment at workplace? So those are the things. Okay, human relation theory. Okay, so starting with Frederick Winslow Taylor. Okay, so Frederick Winslow Taylor, basically he originated the scientific management theory. So scientific management theory, it is about um, optimizing the way works are being conducted. Okay, so scientific method to the management of workers could improve productivity. So he does a lot of why it's called scientific, because a lot of trial and error. Okay, so when we talk about science, it is about investigating, exploring, researching. So what he did at that point of time is basically exploring the best, fastest, most optimum way to conduct a certain work. Okay, so one famous experiment is bricklaying. Okay, so because if you give 10 workers brick and to lay the brick, every worker would have different way of laying the bricks. Okay, so one might be starting from the left, one might be starting from the right. If there is a wall to be constructed, one might be starting from the middle. So if the worker is not giving proper instruction, you will get various way of doing things. So he believed at the point of time, you got so many things to manage. You explore, okay, so you research on the most optimum, the fastest way to come up with the wall, brick wall, and you teach the workers, this is how you do it. Okay, so that's why scientific. So exploration done by the scientists, and the most optimum way identified, you deliver that to the workers so that they can follow through by doing that. Okay, so that's why it's scientific management method to the management of workers. So when he did this theory, he assumed that working systems are generally inefficient because no one had bothered to make them efficient. So at that point of time lah, and workers were naturally inclined to be lazy and inefficient. So hence, you need to tell them what to be done. So you need to take the initiative to understand this procedure and come up with the most optimum procedure and tell them how to do it. Okay, so rather than them thinking on their own. So he developed time and motion study. Okay, so time and motion study was developed because when we are trying to explore different alternative, you need to measure what movement do you need. Okay, so especially if you're bricklaying, so in what position would the movement be? So obviously we want work to be done with least movement. Okay, so tak adalah banyak pergerakan. So and of course with that, how long will it take? So it is researching. Okay, if I move this to that, with that, how long will it take? So time and motion study. Okay, and basically business efficient technique. Okay, so later it was refined by Frank and Lillian Gilbert. Okay, so these are his student lah basically. So the time and motion study has been further refined by Frank and Lillian Gilbert. Nowadays, we still conduct time and motion study. There might be organization who research in coming up with efficient methods of conducting research, conducting construction. Okay, they call it work sampling. Okay, so maybe the name is different, tapi the intention is the same. The best way to complete a task. Okay, so usually it's being instructed to the workers. Right, so to reduce the number of motion in performing a task in order to increase the productivity. So that's the objective or aim at that point, and the best known experiment is involving bricklaying. So at this point of time, workers are required to cooperate with management and no trade union. So if you can recall, just now I did mention the word trade union. So nowadays, in this current times, we have trade union because if you are mistreated, okay, as an employee, other union that could actually speak on behalf of you. Okay, so those days, that point of time, they do not allow it because it will create more chaos. Okay, so workers are just required to follow the instruction and do it accordingly at that point of time. Okay. All right, so best results will come from the partnership between trained and qualified management and cooperative innovative workforce. Okay, so basically, yes, develop 4 principles, develop a science for every job through exploration, select workers with right abilities to conduct the procedure to conduct our work, okay, provide proper training to the workers and support the workers. Okay, that's on Taylor. And let's see. Next one is basically Henry Fayol. So we'll stop at scientific theory. Okay, so we'll stop with Henry Fayol. Okay, Henry Fayol is basically a French theorist. Okay, so more or less he talk about scientific theory. Cuma his one is slightly different because his direction is towards administration. Okay, so he was the one who first identified the functions of management. And imagine at that point, okay, so we are still using the theory until now. Okay, so planning, organizing, directing, controlling. So that was his rendition lah, waktu tu. And yet we are still using the same thing until now. And another of his contribution was the 14th principle that he see needs to be embedded across the organization. Okay, so he thinks that organizations, administration should do this in order to have a proper management at the workplace. Okay, first is whereby specialization or division of labor. Okay, so he insists that it is good for us to divide the laborers or workers according to different department. So for example, if the worker is trained in packaging, packaging je lah. Okay, so don't place the worker in installation ke, welding ke. So don't divide, don't mix them. Okay, so hence, which mean a labor or a worker would be very specialized in that nature. Okay, so divide them according to the specialty. Second, authority with responsibility. So authority with responsibility is whereby the leaders, okay, maybe a team leader or any head or of a certain function should be given the authority, and that head should act responsibly. Okay, authority is given, and with that, the person should act responsibly, with responsibility lah. Okay. Next, discipline. Okay, so every workers or every person in an organization should be disciplined. Okay, and fourth, unity of command. Unity of command meaning to say that there is a certain what do we call it? Command given by certain leader. Okay, and basically the workers should listen to the command by that leader. Unity of command. So command or given by a certain leader. Unity of direction, basically everyone in an organization should abide to the direction of the organization. So if an organization is moving towards enforcing or basically embracing safety and health, all the way from the workers to the management should abide through the safety and health concern by the organization. Okay, so unity of direction. Next, subordination of individual interests. Subordination of individual interest is whereby if you are working for an organization, your individual interest should be put aside. Okay, so the interest of the organization should come as the top priority. So for example, okay, so a simplest example that I could give is usually tuition. Okay, so maybe tuition for sekolah menengah. So this teacher is basically teaching in a school. Okay, at the same time, after school is having tuition. So, but if the teacher purposely does not deliver well in the class, so that the teacher could actually get students to join the tuition after class, then that is not right. Okay, that is where you actually put the interest of you above the organization. So what is being the principle here is where you need to put the interest of the organization above you, as long as you're being employed by the organization. Okay. All right. So remuneration ialah I think ni student for the next class ni dah masuk eh. What time should we complete ya? 5 p.m. Some yang dah masuk. Okay, I just go through this very fast. Okay, so remuneration is basically salary. Okay, so the workers needs to be provided salary setimpal. Okay, so work done should be work paid. Okay, so remuneration. Centralization is the opposite of decentralization. Okay, so decision should come from the central, but not from decentralization. So, but tapi in current situation, centralization it does not really work well because we are globalized now. Okay, so those days is more on centralization. Okay, so chain or line of authority is we have a proper structural organization. Okay, proper structure. Order is basically everything should be in order. Equity is basically equally treated. Okay, so lifetime job, the organization should aim to provide workers with lifetime job. Okay, so initiative, basically every worker need to have the initiative to enhance the quality or their performance for the organization. And SPREP DCOPS is basically harmony at the workplace. Okay, so I think with that, we'll end our class today here. We'll stop here. Okay, all right. So far, any question? So I think the other class dah masuk ni, dah bercampur. But anyhow, I'm asking the class that started at 3:10. Any question for today's class?
Tak ada.
So far tak ada. Okay, let me see the chat box ya. Okay, since no one yang basically semua boleh to start at 2:10, I think can we start at 2:10 p.m. beginning next week? Okay, so beginning next week, I'll change in the EU future. We will start at 2:10. Okay, so make sure you come at 10 rather than 3:10. So we have our class 2:10 to 4 p.m. Okay, all right. So with that, we'll end the class for today. And thank you very much for your attention, and selamat berbuka ya semua. So you may leave because I have another class with the same link.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.